IVM.
Coming up next on Paisa Vaisa, a bonus episode. This is the SBI Cards IPO Special. We're going to talk about this big IPO that's going to open soon, the SBI Cards IPO. I have with me Amit Gupta, Portfolio Manager at Adroit Financial Services. Regular listeners would remember him from last year in November when I was in Delhi and I spoke to him about scuttlebutt investing. If you haven't checked out that episode, you should check it out. It's from November last year on scuttlebutt investing. In this episode, we're going to talk about everything that has to do with the SBI Cards IPO. If you're someone who is absolutely new to IPOs, you should listen to it. If you're someone who already invests, then also you should listen to it because you'll get an idea about what to do when the IPO opens. So don't go anywhere, folks. This bonus episode of Paisa Vaisa coming up next.
Welcome to Peak Planet, a new podcast where we delve into the fallouts of the growth path that we and indeed much of the world has chosen. Sustainable growth is the buzzword. Until we nail that down, we need to ensure that we keep our population healthy and also have the resources for our increasingly urban lifestyles. I'm Karthik Ganesan, a researcher at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, a Delhi-based policy research institute where for almost a decade we've been trying to explain and change the use, reuse and misuse of our resources. In the first season of Peak Planet, we take up air pollution, public enemy number one and an invisible one at that. Increasingly, the most important risk factor for adverse health outcomes, air pollution has become the most unwanted byproduct for an aggressively growing economy. Over 4 episodes, we find out how prepared our systems are to deal with this crisis. You can catch the entire first season of Peak Planet out now on the IVM Podcasts app or website, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and this is actually a bonus episode. It's a special episode. We're putting this out for the SBI Cards IPO. We are kind of breaking regular programming, because we don't really follow the news and we don't have a hot topic for the day, stuff like that. The content of our episodes is a little bit more long-lasting. It's more on education, but I'm just making an exception. And if you're a listener, you could look upon this as an IPO special because whatever we're going to talk about today is actually going to apply pretty much for any IPO. And I know that in the last few years, a lot of IPOs have come. It's created a lot of buzz. Companies like DMart, companies like IRCTC, when they have done an IPO, they've listed and God knows where the price has gone. So maybe some of you out there are wondering, okay, let's just try this out. I put out a tweet thread a few days ago and I'd got a pretty good response on that. So I thought, let's just try and do this. So my guest today is Amit Gupta, Portfolio Manager at Adroit Financial Services. If you guys remember, we had done an entire episode with him when I was in Delhi, and he had this super cool scuttlebutt approach to investing back in November last year. We had spoken about that for a really long time. You should really check out that episode. It was a really interesting topic. So Amit is joining us via Skype from Delhi, and we are going to talk about the SBI Cards IPO. That is, so the date for the IPO starts on March 2nd and will end on March 5th. We're going to talk about the entire process, absolute basics. Because here's the thing, Amit's firm, Adroit Financial Services, has put out a note to all its clients to subscribe for the IPO. That's their recommendation. So I thought Amit is really the right guy to walk us through the process and what all does this entail. So let's just start with this. Amit, welcome to Paisa Vaisa again. Thank you so much for doing this for us. So let's just start with the absolute basics. A lot of our listeners out there might be people who don't even know what an IPO is, or they must have decided today in the morning that chalo boss, even I'll apply for the IPO. So let's answer this very basic question for the first time, guys. What all do you need to apply for the IPO?
Yeah. Hi, Anupam. It's a pleasure to be back again on the show.
Good to have you too.
Yeah. All right. So, as many of your listeners would have known that IPO is basically an initial public offering. And as the name suggests, it basically means that company is approaching the market to raise fresh funds or to list their share in the markets. So to apply for an IPO, you need to have a trading or a demat account and a bank account. So some banks club all these three: trading, demat, and a bank account, which we call as a 3-in-1 account. But once you have that activated, your trading come demat account, you need to have a facility, ASBA, application supported by blocked amount facility, which is now compulsory for all the IPO applications. So that application basically authorizes your banks to block money in your bank account when you are applying for an IPO. So that is available in both physical and demat form, and basically that eliminates all the usage of checks and demand drafts. Everything is now digital. You just need to specify a few things like your PAN number, your demat account number, your bank account number, and your bidding details, basically the lot size which you are applying in the IPO. So it's pretty neat and clean now. You can just go into your bank account or go to your demat account and apply the IPO directly from there.
Super. So that's really helpful for us. Now the big question, so as a retail investor, how much should you bid for? Because that's always it's such a vague topic. I believe the minimum lot size here is 19 shares, and the range of the IPO is 750 to 755 rupees, and obviously you'll have to apply at the top end of the range, because since it's an auction thing, it will go to the highest bidder. So what am I looking at? 755 rupees into 19 shares is about some 14,000 odd. I think 14,345. So tell our listeners that how much should they apply for? So 1 lot, 2 lots, 3 lots, because I believe the maximum size that a retail investor can apply for is about 2 lakh in rupees. So that would work out to, I guess, about 10 or 15 lots, right? So how much should they bid for?
Right. So first, we need to understand that there are 3 kind of bidders basically in the market. One is the QIB, the qualified institutional buyers. Second is the HNIs, and third is the retail category. So each category is basically independent. There is a quota of shares which are divided into this. So in the case of SBI cards, the quota is divided like 50% for the QIB, 15% for HNI, and 35% for the retail investors. So as you said, anyone can apply in the retail category, but the maximum limit is 2 lakhs. So in this case, the price range is 750 to 755, and you have to apply at the highest level of that. So 755 basically you are applying. The lot size is 19 shares. So you need to bid in the multiples of 19. So the minimum application size will be 755 into 19, which is 14,345. And the maximum application size would be 13 lots. So 755 into 13 into 19 basically. So that will be 1,86,485. If you apply for 14 lots, that will be like slightly more than 2 lakhs. So that will be rejected. But what has happened is that this used to happen very often. So last year, SEBI brought a small change in how you apply to the IPOs. They said that the retail participants have to compulsory use UPI while applying for an IPO. So they say that this was probably done to avoid multiple applications in different names, but with the same bank account.
Okay.
So because UPI is unique to the each of the banks, basically.
Sure.
So to avoid oversubscription and cornering by a certain set of investors, SEBI came up with this small rule.
Okay.
So now it does not really make sense to bid for multiple lots with the same bank account, because your other bids were likely to get rejected.
So you're saying that if I have let's say 2 or 3 trading accounts or 2 or 3 bank accounts, I could actually put in different applications everywhere just to increase my chances. Is that correct?
Yes. So if you are applying through a different bank account and a different trading account, then it makes sense. But if you are applying from the same bank account to multiple trading accounts, it is likely to be rejected, and you'll probably get only one chance to apply it. So it just makes sense to bid for only one lot. You just increase your chance to get it. Obviously, you can if you have like multiple PAN applications, so you want to apply from your wife's name or the child's name, etc., and then that is an option which you can take, definitely.
Okay, now walk us through our chances of getting, because that's a big question, right? I mean, the kind of oversubscription that happened in the blockbuster IPOs like a DMart or even like an IRCTC, good lord, it was 70, 80, 100 times. So I wanted to just walk our listeners through this entire process. What what happens? Because there is some amount of confusion that is it pro rata that let's say I applied for 10 lots and let's say the issue got oversubscribed 10 times. So I'll get 1/10 of what I applied for. Is that how it works? Or is there or is it something different?
No, pretty much the same what you have described. It works on a sort of a pro rata basis. And because of this UPI things, now it gets unique. So if you are applying for 10 lots, there's really no chance if the IPO is oversubscribed, there is very little chance that you'll get more than one lot. That's how it can. But in the case of like SBI card, there are multiple options which are open because there are two more categories in retail, which is the SBI shareholders category and the SBI employee. So if you actually fall into those categories, then you have a little bit more chance of getting the lot size more than the 2 lakh amount.
So which means that if I am an SBI shareholder, let's say that I already have 100 shares of SBI with me, then I can actually put in two applications, one under the retail category and one under the SBI shareholder category. And in both, there are enough chances of me getting in both, getting in one or not getting in both. Would that be right?
Let me just simplify this a little bit. This is actually very interesting and unique in the case of SBI cards because that's generally don't happen. So you have got two reservations. One is the SBI shareholder reservation. So they are saying that 9.5% of the total issue, about 985 crores of the shares, that is reserved for people who have SBI shares in their Demat accounts as of 18th February 2020.
So if I go and buy SBI shares on Monday, then that will not work for me.
No, that will not work. You need to have, so basically you should have bought 16th February on or before that.
Okay.
So that T+2 delivery will come by 18th. So you need to have the record date was 18th February.
Okay. Go on.
So even if you have one share, you will be eligible to apply under that criteria. So a shareholder of basically SBI can apply in both categories. He can apply for as an SBI shareholder and he can apply as a retail participant also.
Okay.
So in both categories, the maximum limit is 2 lakh.
Okay.
2 lakh rupees INR.
Okay.
Right. And because these categories are clearly demarcated and already the criteria has been decided that SBI shareholder will get as I said 9.5% of the issues, you increase your chance of actually getting the allotment in both categories.
Okay. That's
and so similarly there is another reservation which is for the SBI employee reservation. So if you are on the payroll of SBI, then 126 crore worth of shares are reserved for those. And the best thing about that is that the maximum bid in that case is not 2 lakh, it is 5 lakh actually.
Wow. So if you're an employee, if you're a retail, wow. Okay. Go on. Sorry.
Okay. So in this case, basically the existing employees of SBI, they are probably the luckiest of the lot. Because if an SBI shareholder is also employed at SBI, then you can apply in all three categories. You can apply in the retail category for 2 lakh. You can apply as a SBI shareholder for 2 lakh. And you can apply in the SBI employee quota for 5 lakh. So actually you can apply till 9 lakh.
Okay. Very interesting.
And for an SBI employee, you are getting a 75 rupees discount as well.
75 rupees discount of 755. So you're going to be putting in at some less than 700 rupees per share.
Yes, so it will be around 675 basically.
Sure. Okay. So folks, we're going to take a small break out here. On the other side, when we come back, we're going to be talking about what Amit believes what he expects is going to be the response to the IPO, and therefore what are your chances if you apply. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be going really deep into the SBI Cards IPO coming up next.
Hey everybody, welcome to another amazing week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money and HDFC Life. Remember, sponsors make these shows possible. Do show them your appreciation. And if you own a brand or work for a brand or are associated with a brand and think that brand would benefit from working with IVM, do reach out to us. You can find contact information on our website. Also, just a very quick note, I would really appreciate it if you guys could fill out a really short survey on our website. It's on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It's just a brand recognition survey for us to kind of work with the advertisers and give them some data. So it's a very short, less than 1 minute survey. Really appreciate your help in filling it out. So people, we have a new show releasing this week. It's called Begin the Journey. It's hosted by national award-winning film actor and motivational speaker Ashish Vidyarthi. He shares inspiring stories from various aspects of life. Stay tuned. First episode comes out on Monday, the 2nd of March. On Advertising is Dead, Varun does another AMA episode where he answers some questions sent in by listeners about advertising and content. He also gets some of his previous guests to give their takes on the questions. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by Lakshmi Krishnan, host of Litnama, to talk about her show and her love for literature. Also, check out Cock and Bull, which came out on Thursday last week. Cyrus is joined by Rohan Gujral, myself, and Silvery. We discuss Donald Trump's visit to India, we debate broccoli samosas, and discuss the case of a crocodile in Mulund. Also, if you haven't been doing it, please do send AMA questions for Cyrus and Varun shows. Every episode of Cyrus has an AMA segment, and Advertising is Dead is going to have one once a month. On IVM Likes, Ritika, Radhika, and Antriksh are joined by the co-host of the Edges and Sledges cricket podcast, Dhananjay Chuck. They talk about the T20 Women's World Cup and discuss movies which portray women in sports. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks about the best way to work on your hands and exercise them. On Edges and Sledges, DJ, Ashwin and Varun talk about India's great run at the T20 Women's World Cup and the New Zealand versus India Test. On Ganatantra, Saryu and Alok are joined by Rahul Verma of the Centre for Policy Research. They discuss how Indian voters vote along the lines of ideology and identity. On the Empowering series, Zarina is joined by Khushbu Banani. She is the content and marketing lead at Diageo India, and they talk about storytelling with brands. On Litnama, Lakshmi is joined by the musician Ritviz and his artist manager Rahul Sinha. They talk about coming-of-age music and their albums. And with that, let's get you back to your show.
And folks, welcome back to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and this is the SBI Cards IPO Special, or look at it as the IPO Special. We've in the first part of this episode, we spoke about the entire process of how to, what do you need to get started to apply for an IPO, which is basically a broking account or a trading account, same thing, a demat account and a bank account. And banks typically, like Amit said, they give all three as one product. Then the second was how much do you apply for, and typically about one lot should be enough. Now in this, and of course my guest Amit Gupta, portfolio manager at Adroit Financial Services. In this second part of our recording, we're going to talk about very specific recommendations. Right, the first is what Amit believes is going to happen. What kind of response does he expect? So Amit, welcome back. Let's get into this here. What do you think? Where we are now in the markets, what kind of a response do you expect for this IPO? Because it's a huge size. I can't remember for a long time any IPO that's come out with a 9,000 crore size now for quite a while. So what do you think is going to happen out there? Oversubscription numbers, and therefore, I want our listeners to just get a feel or an understanding of what are the chances of actually getting an allotment.
Yeah. So there is definitely a lot of excitement in the market about SBI Cards IPO. Basically, it's a very exotic kind of a business, very unique kind of a business proposition. The first credit card payments company to get listed, probably the only proxy to the fast-growing fintech digital space. It is like the second largest credit card issuer in the market, 18% market share. Highest is HDFC with a 30% market share. So there is a lot of excitement around it. I think it should be at least like 100x subscribed.
100 times oversubscribed.
Premium, yeah. That's what the feelers which we are getting from the HNIs and all. Also, the last I checked, the grey market premium was about 300 or so.
Wow.
So we are already expecting like about like 50 or 50% listing gains.
So that's 1,000 rupees. So when you say, so the grey market premium is what, you'd like to call the underground market or the off-exchange market. It's just a nice, it's a good idea to gauge the demand for the IPO. And what Amit just said right now, when he says the grey market premium is 300 or 350, that's the premium that people are willing to pay to buy the share of somebody today. So what Amit was saying, Go on, sorry.
Yeah, so you can say that like 755 will be the price band, and about 300 on the top of it. So, which also means that, a lot of HNIs would be probably wanting to get leverage to apply and get more lots on that IPO.
Okay, so let's talk about that specifically. So if you have any HNI clients, what's the recommendation that you're giving to them? Because IPO funding is a huge business, and especially for blockbuster IPOs like this one. So IPO funding, maybe you can explain what exactly is IPO funding to our listeners. Who knows? There might be some HNIs out there who might be listening to this for the first time. So tell us about how does the IPO funding work and what is Adroit's recommendation to the HNI clients for this?
Right. So basically the HNIs are allocated the shares in the IPO proportion to the subscription number. So if an IPO is oversubscribed, you have a slightly lower chance of getting your allocated quota. But if the issue is undersubscribed, then you have a better chance of getting your full quota. But how the IPO funding work is that, let's say, an investor says that I have only 2 lakh rupees, but I am in the HNI category, so I cannot apply. So many of the brokers and who basically institutions who provide HNI funding, they said, okay, no problem. So you can apply for like 1 crore. We will invest 98 lakhs, which will be given by the broker, and total will be 1 CR, and then you can apply for in the HNI category. Obviously, they'll charge like sort of an interest rate, 7% kind of an interest rate. And HNIs are always applying on the last day of the IPO.
Okay.
So basically, in this case, they will be applying on 4th of March. So there is one extra day, 5th of March, which is exclusively for retail shareholders.
Sure.
So last day for applying for HNIs is actually 4th of March. So like an investor says that you invest 2 lakh and then 98 lakhs will be given by the broker. Now suppose the issue is oversubscribed by 10 times in the HNI category. So that means the HNI must apply for 1 crore worth of shares to get 10 lakh worth of shares.
Correct.
Right. So, let's say that the investor will be allocated 10 lakh worth of shares. Now, out of which he has invested for 2 lakh worth of shares, and rest of the 8 lakh worth of shares is actually borrowed by the borrowed from the broker. Now, the unsettled amount, which is like 100 minus 10, 90 lakhs, that will be redeemed after 5 days of the IPO, because he has been allocated only 10 lakh of shares. So next 90 lakhs, he will be redeemed after 5 days. So in this case, the redemption will happen on the 20th. 5th will be the last day. So the redemption will happen on the 10th. So investors have to pay interest for those 5 days. In that case. But the IPO listing will happen after 15 days. So the IPO listing is expected to happen around 16th of March. So investors it's not mandatory, but they needs to pay back on the listing day. So again, he will be paying 8 lakh rupees, which he has borrowed for 15 days interest on that. So he is paying basically 10 lakh rupees interest on 5 days, and then 8 lakh rupees interest on 8 lakh rupees for 15 days. So eventually, if you do all that calculation, you'll realize that basically he is buying at least the IPO needs to trade at least 1% higher on the listing day.
For this to make sense for him.
Makes sense. Because he is paying interest on the borrowed amount. So this is the case for when I was talking about when the issue is oversubscribed by 10 times. But if issue is oversubscribed by 100 times, then that stock needs to actually trade 100 times higher. So then stock needs to be 100% higher. So in this case, if the expectation is to get like 100x subscription, so it needs to trade around 1400. So actually for HNIs to make money on that. So that's how the leverage works, and the prospect of listing gains, that is attractive enough for HNIs to invest even in a sort of a unsubscribed or oversubscribed environment. So the best chance of HNIs, making money is that if subscription is high, but then the listing gains are also high in correspondence to that.
As a kind of rule of thumb. So Amit, tell us what happens next. I mean, if I'm a retail investor, I've applied for one lot. So how does the process work after this? So so the IPO closes on 5th of March, which is a Thursday. When will, if I'm lucky enough to get shares in that, when will the shares come in and when will the trading start? What's that entire cycle looking like?
Right. So usually there is like 10 days, 10 calendar days, the gap between the last day of the IPO application and the listing of the IPO on the stock exchange. So SBI Cards is getting listed on both exchanges, NSE and BSE. It's expected to list around March 16th. So there was a proposal this from the SEBI side last year that they wanted to reduce the time for listing after the application process is over. But that's a sort of a work in progress kind of a situation. It may happen next financial year only.
Okay.
So March 16 is when we can expect the listing. So usually 3 days before that, all the investors would come to know about their allotment.
Sure.
Usually there is an SMS and email which goes out, which says that you have been allocated, X number of lots from the bank side.
Okay. And if you've not got any SMS, then obviously you've not got any shares.
Then you are very unlucky.
And so you've recommended your clients to apply for the IPO. Now tell us what happens on the day of listing. Let's say that I'm lucky and I got one lot. So actually I want to ask this in two ways. One is that I got lucky. What should I do on the listing day? And second is I haven't got lucky and I still want to buy. What's your recommendation in both the situations?
So in the case you have got it, everything boils down to how you see the business prospects. So as I talked in the earlier part of the podcast, also it's a sort of a unique kind of a space, non-lending financial kind of a space, the largest credit card and all that stuff. But one interesting that the free float is very low. So there are a lot of anchor investors who are locked in for 1 year. They cannot sell it for 1 year. So I would say that what we have also recommended that you use it as a sort of a trading bet for the next 12 months. And during that period, evaluate the business and operations over this time period and decide whether you want to increase the position, increase your time horizon to actually invest in that more, increase your positions, or you just book out the gains. Just to start with, if you're getting the IPO allocation, and it's somewhere around like 1400 kind of a levels, then you can probably look to book out in the case you don't want to carry that as an investment for too long.
Okay.
My sense is that since this is a unique kind of a situation with a sort of a low free float, we may see if everything goes well, then we might see more gains than 1400.
Okay.
So probably it makes sense to hold it a little bit more.
Sure.
But even if you don't get an allocation, you can always buy it from the market on the day of the listing as well.
So that's assuming that you have the stomach to buy something at 1400, which was available to some lucky guys at 755. So you still think that buying on a listing day, depending on your outlook on the business, still makes sense. You would say that.
So again, if you're buying on the listing day, then that will be probably a speculative move rather than an investment move, a sort of a trading bet rather than an investment bet.
Okay.
Because at 700, 750 also there is not much which is getting left on the plate from the company. So at 1400 it's even more riskier to buy it.
Okay.
So keep your position size really small, something which you can afford to lose and always use a trading stop loss just in case. HNI it does not breaks like 1400 kind of levels.
Sure.
Then you might see HNIs dumping it on the listing day because they cannot carry the position for too long. They need to pay interest for every day they hold the position.
Okay.
So it just makes sense to use a sort of a trailing stop loss in case you are doing a speculative bet on the listing day.
Okay, fantastic. So Amit, that kind of, that's a wrap on the SBI Cards IPO part of our podcast. Last question as we wrap up, since we have you here. The usual, the entire kya lagta hai kind of outlook on the markets. What's your take? I think we've had, maybe a 2-3% correction in this last couple of weeks thanks to the coronavirus. What's your take? What are you telling your clients?
Right. So, there are three actually things which has happened in the last couple of months. not just in this week. So this week, it's all coronavirus, how it has spread out of China and how people have been infected in Italy, Japan, South Korea, etc. So this outbreak of coronavirus is threatening to become a sort of a global epidemic, causing massive disruption to global trade and commerce. Most of these agencies like IMF, World Health Organization, ADB, etc., they have actually clearly put that this outbreak will actually materially impact the global economy.
Okay.
So that will have two impacts. One will be that the global central banks will continue to be in accommodative phase, continue moderate their policies. This started in 2019 itself, but this event will prompt them to further enhance the monetary stimulus. Secondly, the deflationary pressures in the global markets has increased, leading to higher demand for safe havens like US dollars, gold, silver, etc. So that is one part, which is the the coronavirus part of it. Why the markets are panicking a little bit. But the good part about is what the RBI has done in their policy a couple of weeks ago. I don't think the market is fully digested what RBI has said to do.
Okay.
So basically, they have implemented a paradigm shift in the policy regime. So after experimenting with like monetary policy for a few years now, they have reverted back to the management of comprehensive credit policy with supporting growth as the primary objective.
Okay.
So they have bought this LTRO and the postponement of gilt securities through Operation Twist.
Sure.
So they are killing the long end of the bond market and the short end both at the same time. So because the LTROs has basically pegged the short-term cost of funds to banks to 5.15, which is the repo rate currently.
Okay.
And Operation Twist, basically that is reducing the gross borrowing by the government through postponement of maturities, etc.
Okay.
So the transmission of rates to the actual consuming public, that process will be get accelerated, and that will be much more effective way of passing on the rate cuts.
Okay.
So that I believe that is my call for like next 12 months or so.
Okay.
That it is very highly likely that we will see our financial markets tracking the trends which we saw in US and Japan after the global financial crisis. So they basically did QE, they killed the bond market. So there was a persistent down pressure on the yields, and like yields at 4.5-5% in the US, they went down to 1.5%.
Okay.
So there was a persistent downward pressure on the yields. So that will keep the bond market and the equity markets quite buoyant.
Okay.
At some point of time, that will also reflect in the real estate. So, from like a 12 months perspective, I'm quite bullish on both equities and real estate as well.
A real estate, someone who's bullish on real estate, man, I haven't heard that for a really long time.
Yeah. So this is the kind of stuff, what happened in the US. So that probably would happen here as well. That the prices would actually crash, and then everybody will there will be a huge demand, sort of a subdued demand, which is not coming up. That might just come up.
Okay, that's good. So on that crash plus positive note, that is a wrap on this bonus episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest, Amit Gupta, portfolio manager at Adroit Financial Services. We were talking about the SBI Cards IPO. Just to sum it up, number one, you need a trading demat and a banking account. If you're only a retail investor, it might just make sense for you to put in an application of just one lot. If you are a shareholder and an employee, of course, you can put in a little bit higher. The entire process will take about 10 days after the listing. And what do you do? If you're lucky enough to get the shares, well, Amit believe that you should hold on for probably 12 months. And if you have not got the shares, you could, buying on that day. It's really your call on whether you want to put in money. Then you should probably look at how much you want to put and take a call on that. Amit, thank you so much for taking the time out and telling our listeners about the SBI Cards IPO. That is a wrap on this episode. Thank you folks for listening. Thanks, Amit.
Thank you Anupam, for having me.
No material on the show should be considered as financial advice. The material on the show is for informational purposes only. Please consult a financial advisor before taking any investment decision.
Hey guys, I'm Mikhail Almeida. I host a podcast with my co-hosts Akash Mehta and Siddharth Reja on the IVM app. It's called What a Player.
What a Player.
WADDAPLAYAH, because illiterates can't find it on their own.
No, and the her at the end is very important. What a player.
Yeah. And it comes out every Thursday on the IVM app. Tune in, we discuss everything sports, all sports.
All sports.
Yeah.
Mainly cricket, other sport in the middle, sandwich.
What happened to your language skills? Don't worry, he talks better on the show.
Yeah.
It's a great show. It has all things, including cricket and things around sports as well.
Yeah.
And some personal life.
As you can see, we're a very united podcast, and if you want to listen to us, tune in to us every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com.
Thursday.
How does one separate news from opinion? I'm Mahrukh Inayat, a news junkie, but not a big fan of debates. I love facts, and I like to stick to them. No frills, just pure analysis. This election season, is Balakot a game changer for 2019? Did Priyanka Gandhi Vadra join politics too late? The Chowkidar Wars. Who's really winning? I will cut the clutter and analyze the stories that matter to you.
You can listen to the show on the IVM Podcasts app or wherever you get your podcasts.